having a bit of an issue before we can get started on the day of our gutter system is overflowing because it's broken. As it comes down and enters the ground, it's broken, it's filled up with dirt, and therefore we're kind of flooding the house as we need to lay down plastic and add insulation. And adding insulation and plastic to a flooding house does not go very well. So first we need to fix the water intrusion. I think I'm gonna change it. Cambio, subito. Cosa ti pensi? What do you think?
Change.
Change?
Not rain today.
Guarda qui. Of course, changing this on a rainy day. Awesome idea.
Okay.
Anche canale, it's plugged up.
It's a beautiful day.
Today we're meant to be insulating the floor, bringing in all of this insulation, laying down plastic, and a lot of trips in and out of the house, and everything is just kind of soaking wet, but we've waited a couple of days already to hopefully allow this to stop, and we simply can't wait any longer because we have a plumber and electrician scheduled, and we just need to move forward, you know? There's been several days of prep work up until this point, all off camera. You'll have to forgive me. It's difficult to want to pull the camera out when it's raining like this. But let me catch you up here. Denny and I yesterday dug this hole to move the water intake outside. Our main water line used to be on the inside of the house. The connection point was on the inside. The meter was on the inside, which is quite odd. That's how they used to do things here, and it also means if you have a leak, well, it leaks on the inside of your house. So we dug a hole underneath the house, found the main connection, shut it off, disconnected it, reconnected it outside, hooked up the meter again, all that good stuff. We also had to do that before the installation simply because that water line was in the way of the actual insulation where the insulation needs to go. Today we have kind of an annoying fan running in the background because we need to dry out some of the work from yesterday before we lay down plastic, but that is the next step, to lay down a continuous plastic barrier as the final moisture barrier, stopping anything from coming up into the floor prior to laying down that insulation. Questo è 6 per 6, 6 è doppio 6.
A doppio?
Doppio. Così. Ok. E dopo prima tutto, dopo così. no,
Facciamo tutto prima. Sì, sì, tanto facciamo tutto.
tutto prima. So with this installation, there's actually a bit of a puzzle piece that goes on. There's only one correct way for it to fit, so that all of these lips sit together. And then we are doing two separate layers. We have one layer of 6 centimeter insulation, and then a secondary layer of 6 centimeter insulation. You do it in 2 layers so that you can cover up your seams, and then the entire system just works a little bit more efficiently.
Okay.
So today's an exciting day, not just because we're putting in the insulation, but also because the window company is coming to do their final measurements for all of the windows and doors, which cannot tell you how exciting it'll be to get to the point where we can finally seal up this entire house, but that process starts today with the final measurements.
$995.
990.
Cambio di 5 mm.
Well, that was a long and slightly stressful window measuring meeting, as it's a very precise thing to go through with all of these windows and measure them precisely as the stones protrude in various different ways. Nothing is uniform or straight as you would expect here, and there's a lot of decisions as far as how much of a profile sticks out from the outside versus from the inside, and how do we actually mount them. It's going to be a challenging process. Some of the windows are very straightforward, especially on the upper floor, as we are closing those all in with drywall, and we've already mounted wood to hold the windows. But on the bottom floor, where all of the windows will be mounted against the stone, it's not an easy process. It took me a while to find a good enough company that I trust with this process, and we've been saving so much money everywhere else on the property by doing most everything ourselves, or a lot of things ourselves. But the windows, those are one item that we are splurging on, the windows and the doors. I don't think I'm going to give anything away now. They're going to take a couple of months to make, and I look forward to making the video of when they get installed and showing you guys what we have selected. Well, hey, just like that, that is one room down. Just, let's call it 3 more to go. Thankfully, this installation goes so much dramatically faster than both the wall and the ceiling installation. So we're just going to plow right through this so that we can move on to plumbing and electricity.
Piace cantare oggi, it's a beautiful day.
Una bella giornata.
Sole! It's a beautiful day. Guarda qua. Guarda qua, metti io. No?
Come on, boy. That's the kitchen, living room, entryway finished. That's the majority of the house. We just have to do the office. And then for a future day, I think we're gonna save the installation for the new room that we've created, the utility room, the laundry room, because the plumber has to come in and drill a large hole with a pressurized water system, and that's gonna make a huge mess. So I just don't wanna put any insulation down until that's done. And that room, because it's new and square, it's gonna be really fast. Just taking a quick break to remind you guys of the importance of protecting your data online. We've been using Delete Me to protect all of our family's data for a while now. I'm very happy to have them as today's video sponsor. What concerns me is that there are data brokers out there collecting huge amounts of your personal information from social media sites, from government websites, from elsewhere, and packaging up all of this information and selling it to companies, other data brokers, and potential scammers, and anyone interested in your personal information. As a result, identity theft is extremely common these days. Prior to using Delete Me, I've had my personal information stolen and used against me at least 4 times that I can remember. When you sign up for Delete Me, they will go out there on your behalf and find potentially hundreds of data brokers who have your personal information and work on removing that information, such as phone numbers and addresses, and will continually monitor sites and repeat removals if needed. After 7 days, you'll get a privacy report showing where your information is public, and then they will go to work on your behalf having it removed. Reading that privacy report is a bit astonishing, just realizing how much personal information is out there publicly. Delete Me is USA based, they're focused solely on data security, all removals are automated, and they give you regular, transparent privacy reports. Right now, if you also want to join Delete Me, you can get 20% off by going to joindeleteme.com/Voyagers or by using the coupon code Voyagers. So go ahead, take control of your information, and thank you so much to Delete Me for sponsoring today's video. So before we move into this room here, we have a small repair to make because somebody, when we were opening up the doorway upstairs and knocking down all of those stones, forgot to cover up this pipe. That somebody was me. I did my best to block the stones from falling down to the first floor, but there were small gaps that small stones could fall through, and I didn't even think about to cover up this exposed pipe, and thankfully just a small stone hit the pipe and shattered it a bit. Only broken at the top, so there's no concern over anything leaking out. It's just we don't want any fumes coming out. So I talked to the plumber, and an approved way of fixing it is simply cutting a collar the same size as the patch that you need to make, gluing it up, slopping out a lot of glue, and then joining it over top, and that is plenty good enough. Unfortunately, I'm losing Denny for the rest of today, so I'm on my own, and I think what I'm gonna do is just, put the camera on a time lapse, put some music on, and just plow through so I can get on to some more interesting work. periodically we are spray painting the insulation with a red circle or a red X, and that's to notate where we've placed P-traps for the underfloor sewer system, just in case there are any clogs in the future. That's one of those things that it never happens, but just in case you want to know where they are. So we will have on the floor a floating tile that can be removed, and then you can essentially dig down through the insulation and get to the P-trap, open it up, and clear it out. I'm choosing not to cut into the insulation now because I really don't think we will ever need to access them. I'm just simply marking them just in case we need to. Well, that's the house finished, and I'm happy to be done. To save all the cleaning up for tomorrow, we're out of trash bags, and I need to get back to the apartment and out of this rain. Alright, so finally, the insulation on the ceiling is complete. That is something that I've been dreading doing for a very long time. A question we get asked a lot is, did we know we would have to go to this extent in renovating this house, or have we been kind of surprised along the way? And most all of this work we knew about before we purchased the house. We did at least 3 months of due diligence and research and talking with experts and engineers and architects and all of that, so we knew what we were getting into as much as possible. Again, there were a lot of surprises that we will probably summarize in a future video someday. But this job right here, knowing that we had to insulate the ceiling from the inside, this is what gave me the most pause of if we should actually move forward. And at one point we actually decided, you know what, it's just simply too much work, and it was the ceiling that pushed us over the edge, and for a while though we had decided actually to pass and walk away and try to find something else. But then eventually we realized and came to our senses that an extra 3 weeks of staring up at the ceiling like this was worth it if we were going to see this dream through, and we didn't want to walk away just because of this. But regardless, it's done. Small section left to finish with the wood paneling, but the electricity here has me a little bit nervous. Let me tell you why. So again, this is above the staircase, which goes up 2 stories. And actually, let me address why I have installed different insulation here. One, because we ran out of the original kind, and I didn't want to have to place a new order. And 2, I had this extra PIR insulation left over, which is, I think I've mentioned before, about 30% better per inch, per depth of insulation in terms of insulation value. And this area, because it's over top of the stairs, it's going to have the highest pressure load. I don't know the terminology in terms of heat rising and getting stuck at the ceiling and wanting to escape. So figured, hey, why not use up the rest of that, and it's better, and it keeps the same depth overall that we needed, and still allows me to pass wires through for the lights, which is what I'm working on now. The lights above the staircase, I want to have kind of hanging Edison bulbs, 3 different, not pendant lights. This is not the light. So 3 different kind of vintage looking lights about this size that has the exposed vintage wire coming down, and then an Edison bulb. But then I have 3 separately mounted, like so. And I'm just, for whatever reason, just having a lot of pause over this and not quite sure where to place them or if I'm happy with it, but just gotta make a decision and move on. So for anyone worried about me cutting into our newly rendered wall here, not to worry, this is just how things are done. This is not the finished render. There is another layer of render that needs to go over top of this, and that's just how they do things. You cut channels, pass in the tubes, and then that's how you pass wires from outlets to lights. So then now that the tube is in, we will just kind of cover this up with cement, close that back in, and then the finished render will go over top of all of that. And you'll never know that I ever cut through this. So believe it or not, the most time-consuming part is not actually cutting and nailing up the boards. That actually goes relatively quickly. The most time-consuming part is putting up this vapor barrier, which is super annoying and also a step that a lot of people tend to skip, especially with the detail work. Let me show you one example here. Whenever we have any kind of protrusion coming through, like this conduit for electrical wire, I'm taping it and double taping it to make sure no air can get up in here. Because after all, we will be then drilling a hole, and then that will allow air to go up through the wood very easily. As a reminder, the vapor barrier is to prevent any moist air from rising up through the ceiling, finding its ways through the gaps in the insulation, and reaching a cold surface at the top of the ceiling, and then condensating, turning into water, and then dripping and staining the ceiling boards and causing visible water damage. But when we're adding in recessed lights and all of that, that's a giant hole for air to move up, not to mention the fact that those lights produce heat, and that kind of sucks the air up in through it. So if you don't tape this area, then your entire vapor barrier is basically worthless and rendered completely useless. Actually, it probably makes it worse because then you're trapping moist air up there. And then the other thing I'm doing, which is really kind of hard to see here, but we're taping all of the seams, and then I'm overlapping every piece in a way that if there was condensation, that water would condensate onto the top of the foil and run its way down. And then I've overlapped that foil over top of the edge of the wall. It's hard to explain, but basically any moisture or water would run into all the way to the stone and would be dried from the outside. So in theory, technically, we could have roof damage in a rainstorm, and we could have water coming in from rain. And in theory, you would never even know about it because all of that water would be taken to the outside shell of the house, which is kind of an internal shell that we're building on. It's very confusing and boring, so let me just get back to work. Well, there we go. That is the ceiling finished. Well, at least finished for now. We do have to do all of the trim work around all of the edges, as well as trim out the beam. We're going to do something really special with the beam. That's just going to come much later into the future. I just really needed to get the ceiling boards up so that we can pass all of the tubes, which are now finished, in order to run our electrical and lights. And can't tell you how excited I am to finally get some lights into this house. The construction lights we're using just don't do this place justice, and I'm looking forward to brightening the place up and really showing you guys how beautiful it is. It's hard to kind of convey that through the camera, and I'm tired of looking up at the ceiling, and I'm gonna go out and spend the rest of the day outside because it's finally a beautiful day out.